Team had a really good question about just a simple discussion about the types of NCOERs that are out there and how, when, and where they are used. So, on that note, if you look down in the description, you'll find a link over to my Google Drive, and you'll find a few documents that may help you out as it relates to Army writing and things of this nature. And I'll do another video about writing, but in this particular case, we're going to look and discuss briefly the 7 types of NCOERs. Now, hands down, there are 2 NCOERs that are probably fill up 95% of every NCOER that is written, and that is the annual and then the change of rater, right? So an annual NCOER is written 365 days after you've signed in and you have this rated period. And I'll get into a little bit on some things and errors that I see people make when it comes to writing these. But I don't want to get too far into the weeds as far as some of the stuff. But if you are concerned, if you have questions about NCOERs or another topic that we need to kind of throw out there, make sure you leave a comment, right? So let's say, so dates for annual NCOERs. Again, 365 days of rated time. So this is where you can kind of do yourself a favor, especially if you are a rater, senior rater, and somebody's reporting into your duty station. Like their time starts you're going to pick up their time one day after their last NCOER, right? But your rated time picks up when they sign in. So it could end up being, a 13-month NCOER, but it's only an annual, right? Or if somebody comes in and then they go off to school where they're not being rated and they're gone for an extended period of time, and then they come back, then you're going to have non-rated codes in there. So that annual NCOER may cover, I had one that covered 18 months. I think I had one that covered longer than that, but it was only an annual NCOER. So just pay attention in detail when it comes to non-rated codes, which there are a slew of them. And if you're in ES and you click the box to enter a non-rated code, it'll drop down and you can get all that squared away. But that's what it is. I want to cover a year's worth of work for this NCO. Now, if somebody just became a sergeant, then that from date, and if they don't leave, then this is like the perfect scenario. Somebody from date and 365 days to the right, that is one annual. But there are so many things that are happening with PCS moves and transitions and people going to school, and that's why we have non-rated codes. So use those non-rated codes to your advantage, because you might, the S1 doesn't know about all those non-rated codes, so they may tell you that somebody's NCOER is late or that it's coming up due, and you need to be able to back up your position and say this is why the through date needs to actually be 80 days later than what you think that it should have been. Next up is a change of rater, and this one's too simple. You have we'll just say a team chief, you have a sergeant, and their squad leader, that staff sergeant, PCSs or moves on to greener pastures or whatever, and you have a new squad leader who comes in, right? So now you have that old one needs to do a change of rater. And it's basically capturing all the time that they had working past, and then that new one picks it up. So, and the hope is to end up getting an annual NCOER, right? If that rater maybe that maybe it was a buck sergeant just got promoted, and in 60 days that rater leaves, then that's another qualification for a non-rated code, right? Because you have to be there for 90 days. There are some exceptions, but you're not going to see them at the junior enlisted level, or the junior NCO level. And we'll get into those in a few. So we've talked about annual, we've talked about change of rater. Next up is relief for cause. Now this one is probably not used as much as it should be, because especially at the junior level, because we see NCOs basically get fired because they suck, and we see platoon sergeants get fired because they suck, or whatever the case is. But all they end up doing, is that change of rater, and they don't even leave enough strong bullets down in the senior rater comments to help the the future boards know what kind of past, potentially checkered past that this NCO had. But that said, like you need to know that if you do a relief or cause, you are terminating that NCO's career, right? For all intents and purposes, it's over. If they don't get QMP, they'll never get promoted, ever. So you're either going to end up retiring as a staff sergeant or, whatever. The next one up is complete the record. And these are all optional reports, right? On down. These are all optional. So complete the record is done prior to a board going in. Of course, the board process has changed over the last few years, but anytime that a board convenes to look at a number of NCOs for consideration to determine their OML, right, then you have the option to do a complete the record. And that's just to give that board another snapshot of what you experienced. So this is not going to happen for a sergeant or for a staff sergeant. It's going to happen, this NCOER is going to be written for sergeants first class and above. Now, do you need to do a complete the record just because a board is going in? Only if there is something that is so significant that you think that it would enhance your ability to be slotted higher, to get a higher or lower OML, right? If there's nothing there, because maybe it's only 6 months, and now you have to try to fill out an NCOER that's of quantified bullets for a 6-month period of time. That can be a huge challenge for a lot of those NCOER writers out there. So I can't argue one way or another, except I will say, if you have something that is substantial, like you saved somebody's life, you were the next thing since you did something that was so outstanding that nobody has ever done it before in your field, by all means. But if it's just to say the exact same thing that the last NCOER said, there's no reason for it. Next one up, we'll talk about both of these together, are 60-day options for the Raider and the Senior Raider. And these are done, again, you're never going to find these being done on junior NCOs. You're never going to find them for a sergeant or a staff sergeant. Typically, you're only going to find these for senior NCOs and not even for sergeants first class. Looking at particularly master sergeants, first sergeants, and sergeants major, right? And this is for when you have, maybe it's a change of command that's coming up. And so you have this battalion commander who's leaving, and he wants to close out, and write one more report card for all these guys. Or maybe, and it can be done as a raider. I want to write one more report card for these guys, even though it hasn't been 365 days. Whether it's to build a profile or just to say, I want to make sure that we pass things on. So that's what those are for, pretty much. And then the last one up is, temporary duty, special duty, compassionate reassignment. Again, these are so probably less than half of 1%, and probably even way, way less than that of all NCOERs that are written. So if you have somebody who's getting ready to go on TDY, but you know that they're going to be coming back, you could do, because you're not going to do, you could do a change of raider, right? Because ultimately you don't know if they're going to come back to you, or somebody's going on compassionate reassignment and things. So it's just another way to close things out. But odds are you're never going to write one of those, ever. In all of my years of writing NCOERs, and in all of my years of watching other NCOs writing these things, I've never seen one of these written. Ever. But they are out there, and if you do find yourself in the situation where one of these may be warranted, then you just dig into 623-3 and talk to your senior enlisted advisor, your CSM, and your S1, who will be able to help guide you through that process. When it comes to, what is going into these things, because this impacts, all of these NCOERs, but certainly impacts, like the relief for cause and annual stuff. And it's just a quick note. Like, you know that you need quantified statements. So we're talking about numbers. And they need to be quality bullets. So he did good on the ACFT. It is not a good NCOER bullet. It's what I would call a fluff statement. It's a fluff bullet. And what you need to try to do is get each and every single bullet that you write as a quality bullet that has some numbers associated with it. Now it's too easy to do, because if you just take what every NCO does, all of those things could equal measuring up into a bullet. So what do NCOs do? We do PT, right? And so if I can take a snapshot beginning to end and say this is how it improved across this team, this squad, this platoon, this company, boom, easy bullet. We go to the range. So we're teaching, we're instructing. And again, if we have, if under your watch it grew from 10% experts to 40% experts, easy quantified stuff, right? And that's a good one. We coach when we mentor, so we're getting dudes to get after their education, right? Whether it's correspondence courses, military schools, or civilian ed. Those are all easy things to quantify. We're getting after our actual JOB. So you have field exercises, you have missions, and all that stuff that's going to play in. And if you're working smart, you can kind of turn one event into a couple bullets, because there's always different aspects to each exercise, right? But I wouldn't name them except once, if that makes sense. All those things that we do, right? We go to boards, and we take our soldiers and our NCOs to boards. We have all these opportunities with additional duties and everything else. So it's too easy to fill up an NCOER. But the next change the next caveat to that is you have to make sure it's actually factual and that it happened during that rated period. And this is where some dudes get in trouble, especially if somebody did something that was wrong and maybe it just hasn't been adjudicated, it hasn't been proven yet. Like, you can't put that on the last one, you have to put that on the next one. And so that next big challenge when it comes to the next one, because maybe you're finding yourself in a position where you are in the same company for more than 12 months, right? Odds are you're going to be in that same company for 24 to 36 months. How can you make each NCOER different from the last? Do not let your same report card be said 3 times in a row. You have to find new ways. You have to keep moving. You have to find ways to be creative sometimes. And one of those easiest things is just to volunteer your time, writing maybe some SOPs. Maybe it is taking on new additional duties. But there's always ways to make each NCOER read different from the last. Even if you're, a recruiter, you're an instructor, you're on the trail, whatever it is, you have to find a way to make it different from the last. So I hope that helped out, team. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about NCOERs, we can certainly carry this conversation on. I appreciate all you guys. So until then, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay stoked.